Thank you. I have a confession to make. I've never seen any of the Harry Potter movies. I don't know if you guys are big Harry Potter fans, but try to have some grace on me. I was born and raised in the early 2000s, and I didn't have much of a chance. Any mention of magic in a movie was automatically witchcraft, so I was, of course, never allowed to watch the movies. I have, however, heard a little bit about Harry Potter from my friends, and there's a part that stands out to me in particular, and this is the Mirror of Erised. A young Harry comes and stumbles upon this mirror, and rather than just seeing his reflection, he's the only one there, he sees the loving gaze of his mother and his father behind him as if they were really there. His mother puts his hand on his shoulder and comforts him. And this is significant because Harry's parents were killed when he was just a baby. And so what does Harry do? He sits down in front of this mirror, and we don't know how long, but he looks at what he really wants, and that's a family. Dumbledore comes up behind him and tells him what this mirror is all about. This mirror, Erised, is desire spelled backwards. He says it shows you nothing more or less than the deepest desire of your heart. You, Harry, have never known a family, and you see them standing beside you. More than anything else, Harry wanted his family back. That's the one thing that he wanted. And I wonder if we were to look in this mirror, a mirror that showed us the deepest desire of our heart, what we would see. Maybe like Harry, you'd see an idealized version of your family, one without disease, divorce, or death. Maybe you'd see the comfort that some extra money could bring to you as you're preparing for a life in ministry. Maybe you'd see perfect love from your family. I fear that many of us, if we were to stand in front of a mirror that showed us the deepest desire of our hearts, I fear that we would see an idealized version of ourselves, one that's more successful, one that's more prepared for this life, one that's more attractive maybe. Maybe you'd see yourself being successful in ministry and leading others well. We always want more and more. If you were to look into a mirror that showed you the deepest desire of your heart, what would you see? What do you desire more than anything else? If you have fill in the blank, you'll be okay. And a problem with this is so often when we gain the one thing we want, we always want something more. If my family is happy and safe and healthy, then I'm just going to want more money to supply and provide for them. But what's next? What's next? Rich Mullins wrote a song called My One Thing, and in it he sings, "Everybody I know says they just need one thing. And what they really mean is that they just need one more thing, and everybody seems to think they've got it coming." We're really bad at being content with what we have. We always want more and more. We keep telling ourselves that our life will be so much better if we just have fill in the blank. And most of these things aren't bad or wrong, but if the next thing is all that life has to offer, we will all be deeply unsatisfied. Our world tells us that we need thing after thing, excess upon excess, more after more, but in a life full of uncertainty, darkness, and rejection, the next thing just isn't going to cut it. So how can we survive this life? How can we survive the uncertainty, darkness, and rejection of life? And I have good news for us, because there is so much more to life than the fleeting desires of our hearts, because there is one thing that can satisfy, that can give you confidence. There's one thing that can satisfy your desires. There's one thing that can give you hope. Your soul needs to trust in one thing. Your soul needs to trust in one thing. This morning we're going to be in Psalm 27. The Psalms have been the prayer and songbook for Jews and Christians for thousands of years. This psalm was written by David, who, like us, has experienced his own fair share of uncertainty, darkness, and rejection. And we don't know the circumstances under which David penned this psalm. We don't know what was happening in his life when he wrote this. But we do know that he's talking from personal experience. We know that David feels the immediate pressures of life. And yet, he has this profound sense of trust in the Lord. And I think this is because David knew the one thing that his soul needed. David knew the Lord. I think if David were to look into a mirror that showed him the deepest desire of his heart, I think he'd see the Lord. perhaps fighting his battles for him, maybe after he slayed Goliath only after throwing a stone. Maybe he would see the Lord protecting him as Saul is violently pursuing him. Maybe David would see the Lord in wonder and beauty as much as he could, and all that he could do in awe is worship him. David knew that his soul needed just one thing. His soul needed to trust the Lord, because David knew that one thing could make him confident, one thing could satisfy his desire, and one thing could give him hope. David knew one thing could make him confident. Let's read Psalm 27, 1-3 together. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? When the wicked advance against me to devour me, it is my enemies and my foes who will stumble and fall. Though an army besiege me, my heart will not fear. Though war break out against me, even then I will be confident. David had confidence that the Lord would be his light and salvation, even when wicked people advanced against him, even when enemies surrounded him, even when war breaks out against him. When the worst possible thing that could happen happens, David is confident in his one thing. David knows the Lord to be his light and salvation. You know, light isn't significant if you haven't experienced darkness. It's 11 p.m. and I'm driving a car full of 4 of my friends from college on a highway going 70 miles per hour, and I'm an hour and a half away from campus. And then faster than any of us could see it or I could react, a deer comes from the median on the highway and hits my side of the car and the windshield. I remember the moment of impact, fear, confusion, panic, and then after my friends profusely told me to pull over, I did. And I look around and I'm freaking out and my friends are rattled, yet definitely calmer than I am, but everyone's okay. We're all okay. Darkness can eat at us sometimes because we can't see what's coming. But it is through darkness that you learn to appreciate light. This accident wasn't earth-shattering stuff. We all got back to our normal lives and everyone was okay, but it really got me thinking. We were going fast and the deer hit us and the windshield, in fact, was concaved in front of me. We actually couldn't find the deer afterwards, but there was something left in the windshield. There was just this antler protruding through the windshield that was stuck here, right about where when I was driving. And so when we got out of the car, of course, we peeled this out of the glass and I took this home with me. And it's funny, you can see some little, it's been like 2.5 years, but you can see like some glass pieces and hair because I don't look like a person who knows how to clean an antler. But I took it home with me, and to me, this antler has been a reminder of the Lord's protection in the darkness. When something bad happens, when potentially the worst thing that could happen happens, what are you taking home with you? Where's your confidence found? The darkness should enhance your trust in the light. David knew that there is one thing that could make him confident, and we too should know the Lord as that one thing. The Lord is our light and salvation. Whom shall we fear? David knew one thing could make him confident. He also knew that one thing would satisfy his desire. Let's read Psalm 27:4. One thing I ask from the Lord, this only do I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to gaze on the beauty of the Lord and to seek him in his temple. David asked for one thing. One thing would satisfy his deepest desire. If he were to look into this mirror, David would see his one thing, and that's the Lord himself. He just wanted to seek the Lord, to dwell near him, to be with him, to gaze on his beauty. Like Moses, he wanted to see the face of God, and we know that sinful humanity cannot dwell and be around the glory of God and survive. And David would take every glance that he could get. He knew that one look would change him forever. One glance and he'd never be the same. This is what would satisfy him in his inmost being. Let's continue reading verses 5-12. For in the day of trouble he will keep me safe in his dwelling. He will hide me in the shelter of his sacred tent and set me high upon a rock. Then my head will be exalted above the enemies who surround me. At his sacred tent I will sacrifice with shouts of joy. I will sing and make music to the Lord. Hear my voice when I call, Lord. Be merciful to me and answer me. My heart says of you, seek his face. Your face, Lord, I will seek. Do not hide your face from me. Do not turn your servant away in anger. You have been my helper. Do not reject me or forsake me, God, my Savior. Though my father and mother forsake me, the Lord will receive me. Teach me your way, Lord. Lead me in a straight path because of my oppressors. Do not turn me over to the desire of my foes, for false witnesses rise up against me, spouting malicious accusations. David seems to ask for many things in this passage. He's really just asking for one thing. He wants to be with the Lord and never have that taken away from him. His soul needs just one thing, and this one thing will satisfy his deepest desire. I was driving past Ozark, the town, not the school, the other day, and I saw a sign for Lambert's, you know, the place with the throwed rolls? And the sign said, come hungry, leave full. And if you've ever been to Lambert's, you know that this is the case. Not only do they throw a roll at you every time you stick your hand in the air, which I'm just going to petition. If I can stick my hand in the air and get some bread every time, I think my life, all of my problems are solved right there. Not only do you have the roll, but you have these giant portions of food, and they give you huge glasses, and then they have pass-around side dishes that people are just walking around with that you can grab. You will leave full. This is a unbutton the top button of your pants kind of place. Sooner or later, we know, we're going to be hungry again. The Lord's beautiful promise to all of us is, come hungry, stay full. The Lord will satisfy your deepest desire in a way that no one or no thing can. And that's why David's one thing is to be in the presence of God. He knows that his soul needs to trust in one thing. So David knows that one thing can give him confidence. One thing can satisfy his desire. He also knows that one thing can give him hope. Let's read the last two verses of this psalm together, Psalm 27, 13 and 14. I remain confident of this. I will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Wait for the Lord. Be strong and take heart and wait for the Lord. Many commentators think that this is David talking to his own soul. He is reminding himself that it is worth it to wait on the Lord. The Lord has given him hope. He knows that in the darkest of situations, and other people's wickedness towards him, and his wandering, and his earthly uncertainty, David knows that he will see the goodness of the Lord. His light and salvation will continue to show up time and time again. He knows that one thing will make him confident. One thing will satisfy his desire. So, in uncertainty, in darkness, in rejection, he reminds his soul to wait on the Lord. Be strong and take heart and wait for the Lord. And the Lord certainly answered this prayer in David's lifetime. David eventually did become king, and he had many, many comforts and securities as king that he didn't have on the run from Saul. He had many children. The Lord certainly blessed David on his time on earth, but we know David didn't always keep his one thing the main thing. His prayer wasn't answered in full in his lifetime. David sinned many times. He made many selfless decisions. He committed adultery. He committed murder. He ignored the sins of his sons. He missed the mark time and time again. Many times, if David were to look into this mirror, he would not see the Lord, but he would see a woman who was not his wife. He would see himself in control. He would see money, power, fame. The list goes on and on. David's not the ideal we should be looking to here, but the God he's praying to absolutely is. David's prayer for hope is spot on here, because David often saw the goodness of God despite his own uncertainty, darkness, and rejection. David's prayer for hope was partially answered in his lifetime. It was. But it also spoke to a hope that would be fulfilled in the future. David knew his soul needed to trust in one thing, because one thing could make him confident. One thing could satisfy his desire. One thing could give him hope. And he recorded the psalm in the song and praise book for God's people. And thousands have sung this song after him and prayed this prayer with him. Thousands have asked for this one thing. And I wonder if Mary of Bethany, the good Jewish woman that she was, had this psalm in the back of her mind, kind of like a soundtrack for her life while she was with Jesus. You know the story. Jesus and his disciples came to the house of Mary and Martha. And Martha, the older sister, was making all the preparations that needed to be done. This was a great honor. She was setting out the fine china. She was sweeping. She was vacuuming. She was cleaning everything and cooking up a storm. But her sister Mary, she wasn't helping. Instead, Mary sat at the feet of Jesus. And Mary probably knew that she was supposed to be helping her sister Martha. She probably felt the glazing eyes on the back of her head. And I wonder if she just couldn't bring herself to get up. If she felt the weight and gravity of the moment of her Jesus. And she would just suffer the consequences for it later. It was worth it to her. And then, you know, Martha, the older sister, comes in and is angry at her lazy bum of a little sister. I'm an older sister, I get it. And Martha comes to tell Jesus for Mary to get to work. But then Jesus says something surprising in Luke 11. He says, Martha, Martha, you are concerned about many things, but few things are needed. Need only one. Mary has chosen the better thing, and it will not be taken away from her. Mary chose the one thing, the better thing, the one that could not be taken away from her. Perhaps Mary knew what David knew. Perhaps the song of Psalm 27:4 was on the back of her mind as she sat and listened to Jesus. One thing I ask from the Lord, this only do I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to gaze on the beauty of the Lord and to seek him in his temple. Few things are needed, indeed only one. The answer to David's prayer of hope was right in front of Mary. If Mary were to look in this mirror, I think she'd see Jesus. I think she'd see her beloved friend, the one in whom she placed confidence in, the one in whom has satisfied her deepest desire, and the one thing that gives her hope. But hope seemed lost for a little while. I wonder if Mary had this psalm in the back of her mind later on in her life as well, perhaps in the darkest moment of all human history, as the one who she placed her confidence in took a trek up a hill to his death. What was she thinking? As they nailed to a tree the one she thought would truly satisfy her, perhaps she heard the words of verse 12. Do not turn me over to the desire of my foes, for false witnesses rise up against me, spouting malicious accusations. As she watched the one in whom she placed her hope in, hanging on the cross, maybe she heard the words of verse 9. Do not hide your face from me. Do not turn your servant away in anger. You have been my helper. Do not reject me or forsake me, God my Savior, God my Yeshua, my Jesus. I wonder if in her agony and the hours following Jesus' death, if she could mutter the prayer of verses 13 and 14. I remain confident of this. I will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Wait for the Lord. Be strong, take heart, and wait for the Lord. And I wonder if on that Sunday morning, when she heard the best news that anyone could ever hear, if she heard some more words of Psalm 27, perhaps verses 1 through 3. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? When the wicked advance against me to devour me, it is my enemies and my foes who will stumble and fall. Though an army besiege me, my heart will not fear. Though war break out against me, even then I will be confident. And I wonder, after her dear Jesus had conquered sin and death, if she prayed yet again, if her hunger for her one thing grew more and more, I wonder if she asked for her one thing over and over again, knowing that it would never be taken away from her. One thing I asked from the Lord, this is the only thing I want. I may dwell in the house of the Lord every day and seek the beauty of my Jesus. I think if Mary, on the other side of the resurrection, were to stand in front of a mirror that showed her the deepest desire of her heart, I think she'd see Jesus. She'd see him as the one thing that had made her confident, the one thing that had satisfied her desires, the one thing that had given her hope. And what I think might be most beautiful of all is what Jesus would see if he were to look in this mirror. If Jesus were to look into a mirror that showed him the deepest desire of his heart, I think he'd see the church, perhaps something like what we see in Revelation 7. A great multitude from every nation, tribe, people, and tongue standing before the throne and before the Lamb, all of us who have washed our robes and made ourselves clean in his blood. If Jesus were to look in this mirror, I think he'd see the ones in who he chose to die for. I wonder if he'd see us placing our confidence in him as he shelters us with his presence. I wonder if he'd see us fully satisfied in him as we will never be hungry or never thirst again. And I wonder if he'd see our hope fulfilled as he wipes away every tear from our eye. If Jesus were to look into a mirror that revealed his deepest desire, I think he'd see us worshiping him. And the one thing he asks from us is to put faith in him, to want him, and to want nothing else, for him to be our one thing. So, if you were to look in this mirror, what would you see? A family without disease, divorce, or death? An improved version of yourself, perhaps? What's your one thing? And most likely, this one thing is a good or neutral thing that's gotten out of place. It's slowly, little by little, that thing will eat at you. And eventually, it's going to rob you of your desire. It's going to rob you of being able to gaze on the beauty of the Lord, and it's robbing the Lord of your full attention. Eventually, if your one thing is not Jesus, it will destroy you. So, how do we keep the one thing the main thing? The best thing I can tell you is worship. Praise his name. In darkness, when you cannot see the light, praise his name. When you are full of hope, praise his name. When you are hopeless, praise his name. When his spirit is so tangible, praise his name. When he feels absent, praise his name. Speak to your soul. Remain confident of this. You will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Wait for the Lord. Be strong and take heart and wait for the Lord. Your soul needs to trust in one thing.